And, and today, as part of the Sustainability Week, we are holding this panel on using athletic platforms for social and environmental good with our guests, Jill Savery and Marley Eisler, whom we are very thankful to have here virtually. Jill Savery entered the sport and sustainability profession 15 years ago, feeling fortunate to combine her separate passions for these two fields into one. She is the Sustainability Director for 11th Hour Racing. Her current work focuses on embedding sustainability into major events and team operations, as well as engaging with the marine industry and the sport of sailing to promote sustainability and ocean health. She's a Green Sports Alliance board member. Jill was the head of sustainability for the America's Cup Event Authority for the 34th America's Cup, where she was responsible for the successful development and implementation of the event's sustainability plan. This work included delivering zero waste, carbon neutral, and sustainable event activities. Jill led the London 2012 work program of the London-based sustainability charity, Bioregional. She served as a co-opted expert to the Commission for a Sustainable London 2012, a first of its kind body that independently assured the sustainability of the London 2012 Games. Jill taught corporate social responsibility to MBA students at the University of Nevada and is a co-editor of Sustainability and Sport, one of the first books in the field. Jill earned a master's degree in environmental management from Yale University and a bachelor's degree from the University of California at Berkeley. In 1996, Jill won an Olympic gold medal in synchronized swimming and was later inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame. Our second panelist, Marley Eisler, is passionate about sustainability, currently working as a consultant and research analyst on impact reporting and sustainability strategy for a variety of companies in the food sector. She recently completed her master's in sustainability management at Columbia University, where her capstone report was on the environmental impacts of cell and plant-based meat. Prior to her graduate studies, she managed the sustainability program of Latham & Watkins law firm, developing corporate strategies around procurement practices and implementing energy efficiency initiatives across 33 offices. She received a BA in American Studies from Yale University in 2016, spending most of her time out at Short Beach practicing with the Yale varsity sailing team. She was captain of her team senior year and previously a member for the US Olympic Sailing Development Team. The discussion will be moderated by Amy, a sophomore in gymnastics, and Jessie, a junior in women's tennis, both from Bulldog Sustainability. We will first have a discussion and then open up the floor to attendee questions at the end, so you can put that in the Q&A chat. Thank you again to our panelists for being here, and Amy and Jessie, you have the floor.
Okay, so we'll start with the first question. Jill, you obtained a Master's of Environmental Management from Yale, and Marley, you were a Yale College class of 2016 and were a member of the women's sailing team. So how do you think your time at Yale influenced you in taking your current jobs in sustainability?
Do you want to go first, Marley?
You can go first.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So when I went back to school, kind of mid-career in my life, to what was then the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, now the School of the Environment, back 2004 to 2006 was my time frame. My whole intention was to study sport and sustainability. And it was at the beginning of this, it was towards the beginning of this profession. So I felt really fortunate that they not only let me in, but that the professors guided me, and I tailored my entire program to studying different aspects of sport and sustainability. Even my thesis was fostering pro-environmental behavior at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So I was really focused on it. And this is what I wanted to do, combine my two passions, sport and sustainability, into one, and felt really fortunate at that time. This was an emerging profession. So I would say it was a fantastic experience. It was a great foundation for me. I needed to have that strong environmental background that Yale gave me to apply to this career that I now have. So that's kind of my story and how I got started.
Great. Well, I came about since I did my undergraduate degree at Yale. I took a few environmentally focused classes like Con Bio, environmental politics and law, but it wasn't until after I graduated that I realized how influential and important sustainability truly was and how interested I was in the topic. And I started working at Latham & Watkins law firm down in Washington, D.C. as their sustainability manager, and really enjoyed incorporating sustainability into those corporate practices.
Awesome. So both of you have backgrounds in sports and sports organizations. So our second question to both of you is, do you believe that sports organizations are beginning to recognize their impact to the environment, as well as their power to shape social change? What do you think spurred this?
I'm happy to kick this. We can switch it off, Jill. So I think that in general, the effects of climate change are becoming more recognizable and the impacts on the environment. I think this is evident from the first presidential debate, there being a question on climate. And many sports organizations are recognizing and reacting to the impacts of climate change. I was reading an article recently where the environmental science advisor for the New York Yankees was quoted as saying that every community that hosts a professional sports venue or has a sports stadium or arena is going to be affected by global climate disruption. So this isn't something that's niche, it's something that's affecting all of us, and sports being part of our culture is something that obviously is going to be impacted.
I totally agree. I thought maybe I would mention, in case people don't know it, because I have been studying this a long time, that back in 1994, kind of the early 90s, sport began to recognize and take action on sustainability issues. Back then it was more environmentally focused. Now it's much more socially and economic focused. So that's like more than 25 years ago. It was a slow start. I feel like we're now getting towards this tipping point where people really recognize the power of sport to make change in this field. But, you know, the Olympic movement, the Olympic Committee added the environment to the Olympic Charter in 1994. That was a time when globally countries and organizations were coming together. The Earth Summit, 1987, when the Brundtland Report came out and we defined sustainability. And every subsequent Olympic Games after that point had some aspect of sustainability embedded to where, you know, London 2012, which is a project I worked on, is really the benchmark on integrating holistic concept of sustainability. But even the FIFA World Cup, a major sporting event back in 2006, started a green goal program. The Green Sports Alliance is an organization, it's like a trade organization for sports teams, leagues, sports sponsors, government entities, athletes, all to gather and share and learn. They were started in 2010, so they're celebrating their 10th anniversary. The Sports Environment Alliance is an Australian/Asian entity working in the same space, and Sport and Sustainability International started a few years ago. They're based in Europe, but it is a global organization. And then a couple of years ago, the United Nations Sports for Climate Action Framework was launched, and there are now 160 sport organizations signed on, big sports organizations and venues and managers, venue companies. So this movement's been here for a while, and I think now the movement's accelerating, and sports entities, sports organizations, and athletes see the opportunity to not only promote sustainability from an environmental perspective on reducing our impact, promoting behavior change amongst fans. That's a massive opportunity. Sports sponsors, who are global organizations in and of themselves, you're talking about like the Nikes of the world. They've been looking at this for a really long time and have influenced sport in some degree. So there's been quite a history here. It's been a long time, but I'm happy to say it's really moving recently.
Jill, I know you're just mentioning how sports is slowly becoming much more involved in sustainability and that combination. And so sports seems to be able to become a leading industry in sustainability? And how do you guys think that sports can take this next step to get to that level?
Go ahead, Marley.
Oh, I was just going to say there's some great examples, Jill. You mentioned some already of particular sports that are really on the forefront of this movement. Some I've noticed are the World Surf League, for example, has made a whole host of commitments in regards to becoming carbon neutral, reducing their single-use plastic, partnering with local beach and wetland restoration groups. There's another group called Protect Our Winters, which is a great organization that seems to be founded by a group of skiers and mountain climbers and outdoor enthusiasts who are advocating for policies both nationally and locally on protecting public lands, electrifying transit, and implementing carbon pricing. And I think sport has to become a leading industry in sustainability because ultimately all industries do. We're at a tipping point at this point, and the sporting industry can impart change through, as Jill mentioned, education, communication, commitments around submissions and waste targets. So it's crucial to be at that forefront.
Yeah, and maybe I can give an example of how a major sports property can really embrace sustainability from all different angles to show how this can happen for the audience. Because, I mean, the sports industry is one of the biggest industries on the planet. If you take into account the sports teams, the venues, the supply chain for sport, and that includes from the food you eat at the venue to the apparel that you might buy, that the teams wear, the equipment, the sports equipment that's needed. I mean, it's a massive industry. But I'll just give one example of a project that I work on at 11th Hour Racing, and it's in the space of sailing. And we are a main partner, a true sponsor at 11th Hour Racing of the Ocean Race, which is an offshore sailing race that takes 9 months. The most amazing sailors. I know Marley knows all about it. But this race stops in various locations around the planet, and these boats go to the furthest points of the ocean on the planet. And every time they stop, there's a race village, and fans can come and see and meet the sailors, see the boats, and there's some activation that happens in the race village that's fun. But if you think about all the entities involved, you've got the race teams themselves, we've got their sponsors that promote and enable their teams. You have the race organizers, of which, you know, we're actually a sponsor of a team and the race itself, a sustainability partner. You've got the whole supply chain around every single country's host city venue, the race village, the food, waste delivery, transportation, accommodation. There's so much that goes into every stopover. And this is a 9-month event. And the sponsors of the race itself, the equipment, the boat builders that are building the boat. I mean, you just think about the massive scale of all different industries coming together for this sports event. And our ambition is that they all embrace sustainability. And that's why we get involved and promote ocean health. It's a sailing race. It's really aligned with the sport itself. So that's where we really focus. But you can see all the different avenues and the opportunities that every one of those entities has now, because sustainability is, it's almost mandatory, as Marley was saying, to do business. I hope it'll become more, I hope, you know, consumers will become more demanding of companies, but it's almost demanded at this time. So anyhow, it was just a quick example of how vast sports and the sports industry is. And if everyone does their part, and together through partnerships, we promote sustainability on the environmental and social and economic side, it's just a fantastic achievement when it happens.
So it is very much possible for sports to become a leading industry in sustainability. So what are some of the challenges in educating and informing the people on the imminence of climate change and issues of sustainability, especially as athletes? Also, what are the risks to athletes of speaking out on these issues, if there are any that both of you can think of?
Take this one first. Well, first, I'm really, really happy that so many athletes are now taking on environmental causes, and that includes climate action. It didn't used to be that way. And I was, in the past, when I was in London working on the London 2012, I was part of a project to actually educate athletes in the Olympic Village about sustainability, about climate change, and hopefully encourage some of them to start using their platforms to speak out. But it has really taken off. There are so many entities and that have great athletes that are speaking out. I think there was a time when maybe athletes didn't feel comfortable with the issues. Maybe they felt like they had to be perfectly knowledgeable before they could speak out so that they would avoid conflict, or maybe they felt they had to be perfectly sustainable so that people couldn't poke holes in their story. There's probably a lot of reasons that maybe an athlete wouldn't feel confident, but now there are so many resources. There's so many organizations that are supporting athletes who want to speak out, and they're helping educate them. And we're seeing such a difference. This month alone, we've had 2 major global sport and sustainability conferences, like in the last 2 weeks, the Sport Positive Summit and the Green Sports Alliance Summit. And they had panels of athletes at each, multiple panels of athletes at each. And these athletes are speaking out on different issues, and they're not all environmental. Some are social justice, environmental justice issues, and using their platforms. Marley mentioned Protect Our Winters, Players for the Planet. Eco Athletes is an entity started by a friend of mine that aims to bring athletes who are interested in climate action together and help educate them so that they can go out and actually advocate. This was going on a long time ago. Clean Air Champions in Canada 15 years ago was educating athletes, and they would go out into schools and talk about clean air and sustainability. You have a whole host of organizations that now have ambassadors, including 11th Hour Racing, where I work. We have ambassadors that are professional sailors that are using their platform to promote sustainability through sailing. The International Olympic Committee has ambassadors. Companies like Cliff Bar has environmental ambassadors. Earth Day Network, Athletes for the Earth. There are just so many athletes coming out. It's wonderful to see. And again, there's so many resources now available to help them use their platforms to communicate about sustainability issues.
I would echo what Jill said. I think, at one point there was a very credible concern with the Kaepernick effect, for example, where athletes might be concerned with publicly addressing hot topic issues, but with progress, it comes in fits and starts. And we're now seeing movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement that has opened the eyes of millions of Americans to many of the issues that Kaepernick was discussing and critiquing. And so I think that for better or for worse, with social media, we're requiring our athletes to tell us more about their daily life. We want to know about issues that they're invested in. And so we're seeing articles when Naomi Osaka was playing at the US Open and sported masks with different figures from the Black Lives Matter movement, that's really resonating with fans. So I think that that's something that we're going to continue to see, both in regards to social and environmental sustainability.
Yeah, so Naomi Osaka was a really good example. As a tennis player, I definitely followed that pretty closely. And so now that athletes are feeling more comfortable about speaking out, how do you think that they can most efficiently and effectively use their platforms to help society become more aware of environmental issues? And then also just more specifically for our audience, how do you think this can be done at a collegiate level? And what areas can you see college athletics make the biggest change to climate action?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think spreading legitimate factual information, obviously that was the case with Naomi Osaka, and sharing concern, connecting the dots between issues into larger movements. I think another tennis example, Jesse, you're gonna love these, but during the 2018 US Open, Djokovic, when he was struggling with the uncharacteristically high heat, he blamed it on human-caused climate change when a reporter was asking. And so I think that the more climate change and environmental issues are discussed by athletes, the more legitimacy they hold and the wider the reach they are to their fans and their audiences. And to your second question about the collegiate level, I think it's wonderful to see how college campuses are really taking on these issues. You see that with Yale in particular having a really robust sustainability plan. You see that with clubs on campus like Fossil Free Yale. And in particular, I've been really excited. I know the Yale sailing team did this on their Instagram recently, but the posts on different Yale sports teams about registering to vote, and that 100% of their eligible student athletes and coaches are registered to vote. And I think those are all really great ways that college students can get involved, both in regards to climate action and just larger issues.
I really like what you said, Marley, about, I don't think athletes need to know all the information in order to use their platform, all the science, all the data, but they do need to know a little bit. And if they come up to a question, they can find out the information from a scientific perspective. I think that's a really good approach. I was thinking, if I were to give advice to athletes who want to speak out, I would definitely suggest find out what you're passionate about, because sustainability is like the biggest term on the planet. It includes absolutely everything you can possibly think of: social, economic, environmental, it's everything. It's so vast. So picking a topic that someone's really passionate about and then get educated on the issue, find out what's happening, find out what organizations are out there working on those issues already, find out who can support you, who can educate you. Bulldog Sustainability is a perfect resource for anybody on campus, any athlete who wants to start speaking out. And then you've got all your resources in the different departments and professors and other athletes, other students, because you don't have to do it alone. And just to also realize, one of the athletes on a panel at this conference I was talking about said, everybody can do something and everybody has influence over someone. It may not be, I don't have 1 million followers. I hardly even use social media, I'm embarrassed to say, but you have neighbors, you have friends, you have other athletes that you can talk to. So I think everybody can do something and have an influence. And I don't know if you guys know Catherine Hayhoe, a climate scientist and educator. She's fantastic. She really promotes talking about the issue. So just asking questions, bringing up the discussion. We need to talk about it more to make those words, climate action, climate change, really just fall out of your mouth, because we're so used to saying them, and get educated and share the facts and let people know how they can become educated themselves and form their own opinions. There's so many organizations that you can join. You can become an ambassador, like I just mentioned. And as far as the college campuses, there's so much going on around the country and even around the world. I'm over here on the West Coast. The Pac-12 has a huge sustainability program. You guys at Yale have a student-led group. There are student-led groups on so many campuses. A lot of them lead amazing zero waste event initiatives at their major venues like football stadiums. One thing that I think is really important that I personally want to advocate for is the athletic departments and the campus sustainability organizations joining forces and working together so that they can achieve each other's objectives, and capitalizing on enthusiastic sports fans to promote education and behavior change and have this big, huge ripple effect that we know sport can have. So that was kind of a lot of rambling, but there's just so much opportunity right now for someone to get involved and to use whatever platform you have for whatever issue is important to you.
Okay, so you all talked about starting larger movements to create change, but how can some other methods that can be used to raise awareness in sustainability issues be effective in drawing attention to larger justice issues, from environmental justice to social justice?
I'm happy to start off with this one. So personally, I think that these sustainability issues, climate change, they go hand in hand with environmental justice and social justice. There's a great term that a climate activist named Leah Thomas recently coined called intersectional environmentalism, which is the version of environmentalism that advocates for both the protection of our planet as well as people. So it's combining that social and environmental sustainability. So I don't think that there is even a difference in regards to the methods necessary to raise awareness in regards to sustainability issues or more social issues. And a lot of those issues are so incredibly intertwined. So one example of, there was a really interesting report that came out about a month ago that focused on Canada and ice hockey rinks and how the number of potential skating days, outdoor skating days in these Canadian cities had been reduced substantially over the years. So in the winter of 1942 in Toronto, there were about 60 high quality ice skating days for backyard ice hockey. And then this past year, there were only 20. And these reporters linked this to human caused climate change and global warming. And this trend, it's specifically for ice hockey, exacerbates the effects of wealth disparity, because it means that hockey, without having these local outdoor rinks, becomes a sport for the privileged few. And so I think that we see these examples of environmental and social sustainability and sport being interwoven frequently. And we all need to do our part to engage both of those aspects. That climate action is not solely for the planet, it's also for the people on
it. Sustainability, as you guys all know, is composed of like the three-legged stool, the triple bottom line, people, the planet, the economy. So the idea about social justice, environmental justice, these issues have always been part of sustainability. People just haven't really focused attention. A lot of activity 10, 20 years ago is really focused on the environmental side. And I think what's happening now is there's a huge awareness happening about the fact that social issues are so important and they are part of sustainability. And we all want to have thriving, healthy communities, and people and communities are part of that equation. It's really amazing how fast these issues have really risen, and it's because of the terrible tragedies that have been happening recently. But at this Green Sports Alliance Summit that I was mentioning, it's just top of mind. I was just listening to it this week. They had several panels that these topics just started to become integrated, and it was so great to see. You now have, major leagues in sports re-looking at goals they perhaps already had, but that weren't good enough around in their community affairs departments, in their engagement departments, saying, we have to do better. We have to build community. We have to build a community for everyone. Sport is for everyone. We want to have a more diverse sport. A lot of sports are just not diverse at all. And it stems back from young people not having the opportunity to play different sports because they're economically disadvantaged. They're from neighborhoods without venues and all kinds of reasons. So, these issues are now, people are really starting to understand how intertwined it all is, and they're taking action even this quickly. There's an example of the Alliance in Los Angeles. It's called the Alliance, and it's the 11 professional teams in Los Angeles that are coming together. It just was recently announced, and collaborating through this 5-year commitment to drive investment and impact for social justice through sport. So now you've got partnerships coming together and people really looking at this. And someone recently mentioned, it's not just for athletes and giving access and raising awareness about the fact that everything is not as accessible as we want it, but it's for jobs too in the sports industry. You know, some of these teams and leagues have hundreds, if not thousands of jobs. So it's providing opportunity, not just for athletes, but for those who want to be, you know, in the front or the back office or work at a venue, and providing opportunities and access for everyone. But, you know, these issues have always been part of it. We just haven't had a huge focus on it, which I'm really glad now it's coming forward. One more example, when I was at Yale, I was taking an amazing course on urban ecology. And as I mentioned, I was trying to tailor everything I did to sports. So I studied Camden Yards in Baltimore, what was then the newer, it's now been a long time, but the major stadiums for the Ravens and the Orioles, and looking at the whole community and where they are and the flows in the community and who has access to those structures and what happens to those structures was no one's there. And studying, you know, on one side, you have abandonment and a very low income community. On the other side, it's all being redone and it's beautiful. And how do you create those links using sport to do that? And I haven't studied it since. It's been 14, 15 years, but there's such an opportunity in sports venues to integrate the community and involve the community, not just in the sports itself, but farmers markets and other resources, you know, community energy, renewable energy, providing it to the communities around sports venues. So just a couple of ways sports can really do better.
Well, it's great to hear how sustainability in sports is coming together to intertwine with many other social issues happening presently. So that's the end of our pre-prepared questions, and now we'll be opening it up to the Q&A from the audience. So feel free to submit your questions. So Jill, I know you said that you don't use social media that much. So one of the questions—
I'm afraid to admit it.
Well, I'm sorry to point that out, but one of the questions is, what would you suggest to a student athlete who doesn't use or doesn't have such a big social media platform?
And again, I'm certainly not an expert on building up a presence on any social media or any other platform, but I guess just what I've seen and what I would do again is, again, pick your issue, get educated, find resources that can help you. And if that means learning how to use social media or hiring someone to help you build a platform, but you have your own networks already, and use those and build those before building it even bigger. Try and get your formula down and get your, you know, your following and start engaging with people. And, you know, that's just what I would do.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that's great advice.
Okay, so our second question is about fans. So we know that fans are a huge part of sports and sporting events. What role do our fans play in putting forth sustainability efforts? And are there things that sports fans can do and can be doing actively to promote climate action with the teams that they love and support?
It's a great question. I guess my initial thought on that would be to celebrate and showcase when athletes are focusing on issues that you're excited about. When you see an athlete speak up on a specific topic, write an Instagram comment saying how much that means to you, and maybe share that post or whatever else it may be. I think that you know, it's crucial to interact, and you can do that in so many different ways, particularly with social media as a fan. But no matter what type of group we're in, be it as a fan or as part of an organization, you can incite collective action and you can showcase what you're interested in. And so I think that that can be done as a fan in a lot of ways, but one being when there are topics that you're really interested in and passionate about that are being discussed, speaking up and showcasing those voices even more so.
I think as a fan, there are a couple of ways you can get engaged. One, you know, Marley already mentioned a few ways. Many venues, not all, but many, are implementing sustainable operations, and they're actually messaging to the fans, whether it be, an outdoor sailing event or an indoor football game or a tennis match or whatever it might be. And it would be great if you adopted sustainable behaviors, whatever they're asking you to do or what should be done. Don't bring or carry reusable plastic bottles, things that we know that are simple that make a difference. And then if you're super interested, try and get involved in those efforts, whether it be through an athlete, as Marley was saying, or a team, or the actual venue itself, or the nonprofit organizations they partner with. There's so many opportunities to get involved and volunteer even. I mentioned earlier that there are so many green teams at college campuses, and those student teams do amazing work putting on zero waste events around the country. So there are many, many ways to get involved. You can adopt the sustainable behaviors yourself, hopefully. Encourage others in your network to do it as well. Ride your bikes or walk or take public transit to get to that venue versus taking a car. All kinds of things that can be done. So fans are critical. Fans are people. They're us. They're all of us. And together we can all make change for the planet and for each other.
So, and every year we have our traditional Harvard-Yale football game, although that may not be happening this year. And many schools and Power 5 conferences have definitely been promoting zero waste game days. I know a lot of schools in the Pac-12 specifically are doing that. And we are trying to replicate something like that here at Yale. So do you have any recommendations for what to focus on in terms of targeted waste reduction efforts at games?
Jill, I feel like you'll be perfect answering this one.
Back to my days of diving in the dumpster or doing audits. Well, the biggest thing is what goes into that venue, no matter where it is. What are people bringing? What are you selling? Because you're going to have to deal with all of that waste, all the packaging, all the leftovers, So doing an audit of what comes in helps you figure out what to change, what products to not allow anymore, and what products to swap for better environmental solutions, or what products or things you're not going to allow people to bring into the venue so you don't have to deal with it. So to me, that's number one place to start. So if you are at any sort of sports venue and they have all kinds of single-use plastic, that is the number one thing you got to take a look at. Food waste, can you compost locally? There's so many to make it a zero waste event truly. What I mentioned earlier about partnering with the venue, the athletic department, raising the importance of these types of issues will help tremendously, because probably students are not responsible for the supplier contracts that supply the venues with food and beverage and all those other kinds of things. So you need advocates to start looking at this from the operational side of things.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is that, one very cool aspect about Yale athletics is that we're very competitive. And so I could see a very cool opportunity where there are two Harvard Yales, one being at Yale, one being at Harvard. We look at 2 years and make it a competition, see if the Bulldogs are better at recycling and what else can happen to be
fantastic idea. Fantastic idea. The sustainability board.
Bulldogs are better.
Battling green teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think we have time for maybe one more question. So you all mentioned voting challenges and involvement within athletes. What are some methods that athletic organizations are trying to put forth time and effort and money into in raising awareness on voting outside of college campuses?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, no problem.
It's a little hard.
With regards to voting challenges and
voting
involvement, how can athletic departments raise awareness on getting athletes to vote?
As I mentioned prior, I was really impressed by a lot of Yale athletic teams taking on the initiative to register 100% of eligible athletes and coaches. I think that's, again, make it a competition, see if Yale sailing can do that faster than Yale gymnastics. But I think that making it accessible is a really necessary aspect as well, but making it something that's talked about and discussed. And so when all of the Yale gymnasts have registered to vote and are perhaps have found a particular issue that they're really involved and invested in, and making that clear to other areas of the student body is crucial and will do a lot.
Yeah, I suppose you could do some sort of campaign to say, the athletes have registered, have you, to kind of get the whole campus involved. But I didn't know about those activities, so I'm really happy to hear that. I think one thing that I really like is I've seen a lot of athletes actually, athletes and others in the sports world really push voting. And the great thing is they're not telling you who to vote for. They're saying, get active, register to vote. It's your right. Make your voices heard. And hopefully you'll research the issues and make the decision you think is right. But it's your voice that needs to be heard, which goes back to the social justice and environmental justice issues and engagement and stakeholder engagement. That's what this is all about. So I think it's really important, and hope everyone registers to vote and votes.
I think that's a great question to close on, with voting coming up, obviously. So yeah, unfortunately our time is up now, but we really appreciate you taking the time to join us on this panel. And yeah, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you for coming. It's great.
Thank you.